The truck died on specialist Caleb Reyes the way most things died out on that stretch of highway. Without warning, a cough under the hood, and then nothing, just the wipers ticking against a windshield gone black with rain. He coasted onto the shoulder with his hazards blinking weakly against the dark, 80 miles from base, 60 from home, and a duffel bag full of 3 days. Levy had already wasted half of standing at a gas station, calling a tow truck that wasn't coming. No bars, no traffic, just the wind shoving rain sideways across 2 empty lanes, and half a mile up the road, 1 window of light. He should have called it a sign. Instead, he called it the only option he had. The garage sat alone on the flat, a low building with a hand-painted sign, Marlowe's, swinging on 2 chains and a single bulb burning over the bay door. Caleb half walked, half ran through the storm with his hood up and his collar soaked through, and by the time he pounded on the office door, his teeth were going. The woman who opened it didn't look surprised. She looked like she'd been expecting bad weather to bring someone to her door eventually, and had simply been waiting for the math to work out. She was younger than he expected for someone running a place like this alone. 30, maybe, in canvas coveralls rolled to the elbow, hair tied back, a smear of grease along one forearm that the rain hadn't touched. She studied him for exactly as long as it took to decide he was in trouble, then stepped back from the door. "Truck are you?" she asked. "Truck," Caleb said. "Engine just stopped." No warning. "They usually warn you," she said. "You just weren't listening." She nodded him inside out of the rain and reached for a set of keys off a pegboard without being asked for them. "I'll pull it in. Sit by the heater before you say anything else." Her name, the sign told him, was Eden Marlowe. Her manner told him nothing at all. Competent, short on words, the kind of quiet that mechanics usually only earned after 20 years and a few hard winters. Caleb was 20 years old and had been in the Army 18 months. He'd met women like this before, mostly behind the counter at diners near base, the kind who'd seen every soldier come through tired and broke and never once let it show on their face that it mattered to them. He sat in the plastic chair by the space heater and watched her tow his truck into the bay through the office window. Hood already up, flashlight already between her teeth, before he'd finished peeling off his jacket. It took her 11 minutes to find the problem and 4 hours to fix it, because the problem kept finding company. The first was simple, a corroded fuel line, the kind base mechanics saw weekly and fixed without thinking twice. She had it diagnosed before Caleb finished his second cup of coffee, working under the hood with the unhurried economy of someone who had done the same motion 10,000 times and felt no need to perform it for an audience. The second wasn't simple. She was halfway through replacing the line when she went still. Not startled still, not careless still, but a stillness Caleb would spend weeks trying to describe to people who hadn't seen it. One hand stayed exactly where it was. The other reached, slow and flat, for the work light, and turned it 3 inches to the left. "Step back to the door," she said. Not loud, not urgent in the way people usually meant urgent. No edge in it at all. "All the way to the door, please." Caleb didn't ask why. Something in the register of her voice made the question feel beside the point. He backed up. She knelt beside the old fuel line a moment longer, looking at something he couldn't see from where he stood. A hairline split where the corroded line met a cracked valve on the old space heater. She must have clocked the second she walked into the bay, the kind of leak that didn't announce itself with a smell until it had already filled a closed room with vapor. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't reach for a rag or a wrench or anything fast. She reached with the same flat, unhurried economy as everything else she'd done that night, and shut a valve Caleb hadn't even known was there, then opened the bay door side vent with her boot without standing up. "There," she said, like she'd just finished a sentence instead of whatever that had been. "Go ahead and breathe normal again." What was that? A valve that should have been replaced 2 winters ago. She went back to the fuel line as if nothing had happened at all, hands steady, voice level. "Lucky we caught it before it caught us." It didn't look like luck to Caleb. It looked like she'd known the shape of the problem before the problem had finished introducing itself. The same way she'd known, walking him in from the rain, that he wasn't trouble before he'd said a word. But she didn't explain herself, and something about the set of her jaw told him she wasn't going to. So he let it go and watched her finish the line instead, the radio playing low, the rain easing outside, and somewhere in the back of his mind a small, stubborn thought that refused to leave. She had not been afraid for 1 second of something that should have scared anyone. By 2 in the morning, the truck ran clean, and Eden wiped her hands on a rag and looked at it the way some people looked at a finished crossword, satisfied, already moving on. Caleb reached for his wallet before he'd even stood up. I don't have much, but put that away. I can't just. You can, she said, and you will because I didn't do this so you'd pay me. I did it so you get home. She poured the last of the coffee pot into a thermos and pushed it into his hands before he could argue further. Drive slow till the sun's up. Roads get worse before they get better out here. At least let me get your name right. For telling people there's a good mechanic out here. Eden's fine. She was already turning back toward the bay. Already done with the conversation in the unhurried way she seemed to be done with everything. Go home, specialist. He hadn't told her his rank. He thought about that the whole drive back to base. Turn it over more than the valve, more than the stillness in her hands when she'd backed him toward the door. A gas station owner on a dead stretch of highway who'd read a leak before it had a smell and read his collar insignia in a single glance through the rain. By the time the sun came up over the motor pool, Caleb Reyes had decided 2 things: that he would never forget the name Eden Marlowe, and that he would probably never have a reason to think about her again. He was wrong about the second part within 3 weeks. It started the way most things start in the Army, as a story told over a chow line, half for laughs. She just knew you were a soldier, Specialist Dario Wynn said, not unkindly, more delighted than skeptical. What? She smelled the diesel on you. I don't know how she knew, Caleb said. She just did. And the valve thing, Wynn said, grinning, sounds like you fell asleep in a gas station and dreamed up an action movie. Caleb let it go, the way he'd let it go a dozen times already, except that this time their platoon sergeant was 3 feet away doing paperwork and not pretending not to listen anymore. Say that name again, Staff Sergeant Aldo Pruitt said, without looking up. Eden Marlowe. What? Pruitt didn't answer right away. He finished the line he was writing, set down his pen, and looked at Caleb the way a man looks at a coincidence he doesn't quite believe is one. Their garage out on Route 9, called Marlowe's? Yeah. How'd you? I didn't know about the garage. Pruitt was already reaching for his phone. I knew the name from a packet battalion sent down 2 years ago for some kind of regional memorial project nobody ever followed up on. Names of EOD techs from this AO with confirmed safe disarmal records over 200. There weren't many. I remembered hers because she was younger than every other name on that list by almost a decade. The chow hall got quieter around them in the particular way rooms get quiet when men sense they've wandered into something bigger than they meant to. EOD, Caleb said. Like bombs. Like bombs, Pruitt said. Like 212 of them, safely, if the packet I read wasn't wrong. In one ambush on a supply convoy that doesn't show up in the unclassified file, except as a single line that says 31 personnel recovered, 0 killed. Route cleared under fire by lead EOD tech. Caleb thought about a hand reaching slow and flat for a work light. About a woman who hadn't grabbed for a rag or run for the door, who had simply found the shape of the danger and shut it off like she was closing a drawer. She didn't say any of that, he said quietly. She just fixed my truck. That, Pruitt said, sounds about right. 3 weeks to the day after the storm, a column of vehicles turned off Route 9 and pulled into the gravel lot at Marlowe's. Not 2 trucks, not a squad's worth, but the better part of an engineer company, 110 soldiers in formation gear stepping down off the tailgates into a morning gone bright and still. Lieutenant Colonel Foster rode in the lead vehicle with a folder he hadn't opened since leaving base because he already knew every word inside it. Eden came out of the bay wiping her hands on the same rag she always wiped them on and stopped in the doorway the way a person stops when the math of a moment doesn't add up yet. Too many soldiers, too much silence, nobody moving until she did. Mom! Foster came forward alone, the formation holding behind him, and the single word landed in the gravel lot like something dropped from a height. Staff Sergeant Pruitt brought something to my attention 3 weeks ago that should have come to mind a long time before that. I just fixed a truck, Colonel. You disarmed 212 confirmed devices over 3 deployments, Foster said, the last of them on a stretch of road not unlike this one, under direct fire, with 31 soldiers behind you who are alive today because you didn't hurry and you didn't panic. The Army gave you a citation for that and a badge to go with it, and then it let you walk off this post 7 years ago and disappear into a gas station, and nobody ever followed up. That's on us, not on you. He opened the folder then, not because he needed to read it, but because the company needed to hear it read aloud. The dates, the deployments, the device count, the line about the ambush that didn't sound like much until you understood what 31 names weighed. He read her old call sign last, the way the report had logged it, the way her unit had once shouted it across radio static when the line went quiet and they needed to know she'd made it through. Still fire, he said. Caleb watched her face while the colonel read. She didn't cry. She didn't smile the easy smile people perform for cameras. She stood very straight, the same flat, unhurried stillness from the bay 3 weeks ago, and let the words land on her the way she'd let the danger find its own shape that night, without flinching, without needing to be anything other than exactly what she already was. Company, Foster said, and 110 soldiers came to attention behind him in a single motion that cracked across the gravel like a closing door. He took the badge from the folder, the EOD Master badge she'd earned and never worn home, and pinned it on her himself, his hands less steady than hers had been all night in that bay. And then he stepped back and rendered the salute first, so the company could follow him into it instead of waiting on her. She returned it the way Caleb imagined she did everything, without hurry, without performance, simply because it was correct and true and the moment required of her. Pruitt found Caleb afterward, both of them standing a little apart from the formation while soldiers shook her hand one at a time, unhurried, like men finally getting to thank someone for something they carried without knowing whose debt it was. You said she'd just fix your truck, Pruitt said. She did, Caleb said. He was watching her accept a young private's handshake with the same plain courtesy she'd shown him the rain. Like the badge on her chest changed nothing about how she meant to treat the next stranger who showed up needing help. I just didn't know what else she was doing at the same time. He thought about that the whole drive back to base, and a long time after, about a woman who had spent a war keeping calm in rooms built to kill her, and then spent the years after keeping that same calm in a gas station on a dead stretch of highway, never once asking anyone to notice. He understood, finally, why she hadn't needed his rank insignia to know what he was. She had spent her whole life reading rooms for the thing other people missed. He just hadn't known, until 110 soldiers stood at attention in her gravel lot, that the one thing she'd been missing all along was someone willing to read the room right back.